Welcome to Commander Central, episode 76. Today, we're going to take a long, lingering look at Ravnica Allegiance. How you doing, Ravnica Allegiance? I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.
Gentlemen, let's put on a podcast. How you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Anything exciting happening in anyone's lives before we get into it? I didn't have anything exciting happen. I went to the dentist today, which is like 6 blocks away from here, and so my face is just kind of returning to normal. But I will note, I did fall asleep 3 times while getting a cavity filled, and like the third time the dentist is like, okay, you need to try to stay awake. This is really challenging when you keep falling asleep.
Oh, I just haven't put the bite block in, and then I fall asleep.
Yeah, well, it wasn't like, I'm just like, I'm lying down, man. It's 1 p.m. I just ate lunch a little while ago. I'm feeling relaxed. My face feels like it's frozen.
The drill is just a white noise machine,
Yeah, kind of. That's
essentially.
kind of how it was, yeah.
And you have that weird, 80s, 90s mix playing through the speaker system.
Exactly. And then I had to gas up afterwards, so I got myself a little thing of chocolate milk to drink because I didn't have any lunch. I wanted to get something with a little bit of protein in my system, and I immediately spilled on myself because I, of course, couldn't feel anything, so I failed at drinking immediately. But my face has returned to normal for podcasting, so we can continue. Any fun games this weekend from anybody? Chris played some games, but I didn't play with you. How did those go?
Wonderful. I swear everyone hated me every game for some reason.
I didn't.
You still won at least one of them, I think, didn't you?
Yeah, I killed someone with Reki while at 1 life.
Nice.
After he sudden spoiled my only creature I had.
So how did you turn that around then?
I had Heroes Podium out.
Yeah, that
so
gets you there.
all legendaries get +1/+1 for each other legendary. I drew Oath of Nissa, played Oath of Nissa, found a legendary creature, cast it, and attacked him for a 1, which is what his life total was at. And he's like, he had to read sudden spoiling. I'm like, no, it keeps his creature type. It's just, that's what's going to happen.
It's still a legendary.
Yep.
How about you, Max?
I played a handful of games. Got a win with Ravnica this week after making a lot of changes.
Yeah, you really tweaked that deck. I want to see it since you've played. I've not seen it since you made the changes, but I want to play it.
I ended up winning with commander damage. I killed every opponent with
Oh,
Krav.
Nice.
The game ended with a 32-32 Krav on the field.
Yeah, that's something to deal with.
Yeah, it was fun. Whisper Silk Cloak did a lot of work in that game.
Because that's one of your new additions, right?
It was one of the new additions.
I had a few good games. Nylea's Colossus again. I've been playing my Sigarda deck after not playing it for 6 months. Nylea's Colossus just ends games in that deck. I don't know. I remember when it first came out, when that was spoiled in that Banchantress deck, people for some reason weren't talking about it. It is 7 mana, but it's 7 mana that if it goes in the field and you're in an Enchantress deck, you're probably just going to kill somebody. And I killed multiple people with it. So that card has been just fantastic. I got destroyed by a Tragic Arrogance because it was like it wasn't in that game. I remember what deck it was, but I had 1 bad token and 1 bad enchantment and 1, an artifact enchantment. I think I had Bite of Thassa out that counted as 2 things. And, the other person who cast it had 2 great things. So he just kept his good stuff and gave me a treasure token and a Bite of Thassa or something. And it was just miserable. And that's a card I don't feel like we see enough, because whenever I've seen it cast, it always feels like it just destroys your situation.
I think it's similar to the card Chris talked about a couple weeks ago with Grasp of Fate. It's similar that you get to pick something, and whether you hit one thing from one player or a bunch of things from a bunch of players, it's going to do work every time.
And you do have the alternative if you want to kind of be political about it, or make political choices that help you. If you want to leave 1 good creature for somebody else and say, hey, steer that towards somebody else, it gives you the chance to do those kind of things if you want to. Whereas the Wrath of God just wipes the board. So, that card I like, and it did some really nice work. I wanted to mention Reality Shift. First of all, I think we all realize Reality Shift is a really good card. But I got a chance to use it when somebody mystical tutored a Approach to the Second Sun to the top of their library.
Uh-oh.
And I just kind of realized as I was thinking what the board said, I'm like, oh, I could, if I reality shift their creature, I can manifest that approach and have it go away. The person wound up responding. It was actually listener Jerry, who's a Patreon supporter, who was over playing with us for the night. And he, I think, wound up, I can't remember what he did. I think he wound up then having to kill his own creature, so the reality shift fizzled, so it wouldn't put the approach on top, which still felt pretty good. If you have to get somebody to respond that way, that's still all right.
That's awesome.
So yeah, reality shift, it's more than just a removal spell. You can actually use it to deal with someone's top deck too. So that was my games for the week. If you want to tell us about some cool stuff that happened to you, how would you find us on the interwebs, Chris?
You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central. You can search us up on Facebook, CMDR Central. You can find us on YouTube, where mainly is most of our content, that kind of stuff. Search that at CMDR Central as well. You can find us online at cmdrcentral.com. You can also find us on iTunes by searching up.
What's that again?
CMDR Central.
There you go.
At least we're consistent.
Yeah.
You can also head over to flipsidegaming.com and find us there, listen to our show there, as well as use our promo code CMDR in all caps to save 10% on all orders, $10 or more.
Yes, indeed. You can get your own Reality Shift or Nylea's Colossus or Tragic Arrogance or whatever MVP card you want to pick up. As long as your order is $10 or more, you can save 10%.
Sweet.
And if you want to support us on Patreon, how would you do that, Max?
Patreon.com/CMDR Central.
Once again,
great
really
marketing.
really easy to find us.
You know, any contribution helps us keep the lights on, and apparently will buy me pants for the video shows.
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
But otherwise, $2 gets you invited to our Slack, where we talk about spoilers and brew decks together, and just really anything happens in there lately.
It's just surprisingly busy most of the time, for sure.
I have no clue.
We actually have 3 new patrons to announce.
Oh, nice.
So this is my bad. I didn't announce anybody last week because of the holidays.
Yep.
Kind of forgot about people. I apologize. So the 3 new patrons to announce is Chris Fitzgerald, David Schultz, and Jesse Schneidwind.
And I think Jesse just joined today, I believe. We saw him pop up in the Slack. Yeah. So thank you guys very much for supporting us and helping us out. We appreciate it. We have a few contests ongoing right now as well.
Yep. So for Twitter, every week we're going to be posting a picture of that awesome full art Leyline of Anticipation. As long as you retweet that, we will enter you to win the contest. And last week I totally screwed up everything about that.
Did you? What did you do?
Wrong tag. I said his name, his Twitter profile name.
Okay.
Which is the reverse of his Twitter handle.
So what is the correct information?
So that altar is done by local friend of the show, Mark Richter. He can be found at Alters Richter on Twitter.
Okay, Alters Richter, and it's a really good-looking card.
It is. I actually might enter the contest myself because I need a copy of Leyline of Anticipation.
And you did post a picture of it last week as well.
I did.
All right. And how about for Patreon?
For Patreon, we're going to be giving away a Ravnica Allegiance bundle.
Nice.
Brought to you by D20 Gaming here in Eau Claire.
Excellent. And I think we're pretty close to doing some FTV giveaways as well.
We are. We're almost about 10 people out. We're in the mid-80s right now. So once we hit 100 and keep it for a month, we'll be giving away to 2 lucky people. One will get a From the Vault Angel sealed, and one will get a sealed From the Vault Transformed.
Excellent.
And I know last month we gave away a box topper.
We did.
That's right. And it just so happened that a Patreon supporter who lived hour and a half-ish away drove over to play last Tuesday and opened his box topper that he won, and we put it on Twitter, I think the video of it. It was I've just now forgot what it was.
Leovold, wasn't it?
It was.
Leovold Emissary Trust box topper, which is a really good-looking card, actually.
Which is a shame that it's banned in Commander. So,
well, he was immediately trying to figure out what could I trade this for that I want.
And I think he ended up choosing that he's going to build 1v1 deck around it.
Yes, that's what he said. Yep.
So
congratulations to Matt for winning that Leovold. All right, should we talk some Ravnica Allegiance?
Bad set. I'm going home.
It's pretty. It's not. I mean, it's not as good as Dragon's Maze, but it's all right. So compare to Guilds of Ravnica in the fall. That's an easy comparison to make. Just looking at it at this point, how do you like it compared to Guilds?
Much better because Rakdos is in it.
Yeah.
And Azorius.
I feel like there's more cards that catch my eye.
This seems more EDH focused,
yes,
or more EDH stuff to use versus Guilds had.
Guilds, I didn't feel like it was a bad set, but I felt like it much more was geared towards Standard, which is fine. I mean, they have to do that.
When Standard rotates, Guilds will be the set that's left.
It'll be the flagship kind of set of the. So that makes sense, and not everything needs to be for Commander. I get that, but this one felt like it did a nice job straddling that line where there's a lot of Commander stuff, and I'm sure it's still going to be impactful in Standard. So I've been pretty impressed with it so far. And also I kept forgetting, I'm going through the card list to refresh today. I'm like, oh man, I forgot that was one that got spoiled 3 weeks ago. I forgot that was a card that got spoiled. There's a lot of very, very interesting things. We usually try to do this different every time we do a review set. Sometimes we do one of each card type, or we do,
The commanders.
Right. I think this time we're just going to each pick 5 cards that we think are going to impact commander, and we're going to talk about them. So we'll just kind of go around the room and each bring up a card until we are all done, and we're going to start with Max.
Awesome. So my first one is going to be Hero of Precinct 1.
Yeah, we were just talking about that off camera because I'm not that well-versed in Modern, and Chris is currently playing Modern Humans. So I wanted to ask him if that was remotely Modern Humans playable, and he laughed and laughed and laughed at my ignorance because apparently there's not a lot of multicolored humans in that particular deck.
12 of them, but
you don't cast a lot of them, you said.
No, and this is a 2-drop that you'd have to cut Thalia's Lieutenant or Thalia or Meddling Mage, or
there's just better stuff.
there's much better stuff.
But for commander,
so we're looking at a 2/2 human warrior for 1 and a white, and it says whenever you cast a multicolored spell, create a 1/1 white human creature token.
So it's a human warrior, 1 and a white. That's relatively cheap. It's easy to get out there.
Right.
2/2 is not terrible. It's not great, but I mean that's
a decent body.
That's for 2 mana. That's what you're going to get. But you're just going to get free tokens when you cast multicolored spells.
Right. So, I mean, Ramos decks that are all multicolored spells is going to make you token fodder to block. Najila.
Yeah, because it's also a warrior that just fits perfectly in Najila as well.
Yep. The only downside is this doesn't make warriors.
It just makes humans.
But still, it's another warrior that's attacking to make more warriors. So I think this goes into a lot of the 99 in a lot of aggro-based decks.
Particularly if it's like a 3-color or more type of deck where you're going to be running a higher percentage of multicolor spells. I think it is really, really solid.
And I do like that it's just spells and not a specific type of spell.
Yes.
For the trigger.
And I think being a 2-drop really helps because sometimes you get those things where they make those 6-drop cards that are really, really powerful. And you look at your deck and you're like, okay, well, I've already got 7 6-drops in here. I don't need another one, so I got to pull something. It's much easier to find a home for a 2-drop in your deck than it is to find a home for that 6-drop. Because almost anything you pull out is probably not going to raise your curve, whereas when you're like, I can't be running 8 6-drops when I already have 7.
Unless you're playing the Dragon.
Right, yeah, I guess. So yeah, I like that card. I think it's going to be in a few decks. It's one of those ones, too, that is really tough to justify removing. Like, if you cast that, no one's going to blow Swords to Plowshares on it. And even if you're gaining tokens off whenever you do, will you, Chris, would you?
Not right away, but once I see the first multicolored spell and I'm like, okay, this is how we're playing. No, it's got to go.
This is going to get out of control. But you won't do it right away. Like, there's some creatures like, I got to deal with that immediately. And this is one of those ones where you're like, unless you really can see something awful happening, it's probably going to sit there just making value all game long.
For sure.
So I like it. Chris, what's your first card?
I'm debating which one I want to talk about first.
All right. Flip a coin.
That's what I did. I just clicked on a random tab. So my first card is Wilderness Reclamation. It is a 4-mana enchantment, 3 colorless, 1 green. The enchantment reads, at the beginning of your end step, untap all lands you control. Basically, I looked at this card.
And you're like, that can't be right.
Yeah, that's the first thing that I thought. And then I had to reread it. I'm like, okay, so it's just your end step. It's not
just your end step.
Just your end step. So it's not every, person's. It's not like a Seedboard Muse or something like that. But this allows you to just go complete tap out on your turn.
Yes.
And go, oh, I'm just going to untap now. And just leave up mana just to, even if you're just bluffing things.
Sure, right. The worst case scenario, the absolute worst case scenario with this card is everyone at the table goes, what does he have in his hand?
Yep. I mean, you could have a Yeva, Nature's Herald, or whatever it is that gives all your creatures flash, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I'll flash her in at the end of your turn.
Or you have nothing, but they don't know, and they have to consider the fact that you have 7 mana available right now.
Yep. And with all the new Simic cards that were getting printed, I foresee a lot of Simic decks getting built, and this will definitely be put in there.
I think that's a good point. I think it's a card that shines in multicolor decks. If you're in a Simic deck where it makes it that much easier to leave counterspell mana free, or if you are in a deck where you have a lot of activated abilities on creatures, like if you're in Rune where you have to save mana free for Rune's ability, well, you don't have to now. You can just tap out, your land's all on tap, and now you have Rune mana available.
Exactly.
Risa Redeemed, where you've got that activated ability
I didn't
to make
even
tokens.
think about that one.
So I think, this isn't a card I don't think you just blindly toss into any green deck, but I think the decks that have that activated ability or maybe have counter magic or do a lot of instant speed stuff really, really like this.
Yeah, something. I mean, even if you're playing a green-black deck where you're playing a lot of removal or something, where you can untap to have your removal but jam your creatures and your artifacts during your turn and not have to worry about it then.
Yeah. I am in complete agreement there. Are there any decks that you were thinking of putting this into?
Not right now. It was a card that caught my eye, and I was just like, okay.
Yeah,
the best part about it is it's an uncommon. It's not even a rare. It's an uncommon.
Right.
I have no home for this currently myself, but I did immediately was like, I'm gonna grab a foil one of these because there's just at some point it will go in a deck of mine.
Or in 2 years from now, that foil is going to be worth a lot of money because it's in a 2,000 decks on EDH track.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's one I definitely want to pick up for future use, and it was on my list as as a card to talk about as well. So speaking of enchantments, and I went through, like, we're doing top 5, but I did top 10 for myself just so I had backup cards. Like 8 of my top 10 cards were enchantments. I don't know why this set had so many good enchantments, but it did. And
I have a lot of enchantments as well.
3 of mine were enchantments.
Yeah, and I think
one of them used to be an enchantment.
Surprise!
well, I think this one is definitely one that is going to be talked about a lot, and it's probably in both your lists, so we might as well mention it. Smothering Tithe. It's 3 and a white for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you create a colorless treasure artifact token with sacrifice the artifact and add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So number 1, they have now said that treasure is, it's not evergreen, is it deciduous, where they aren't going to put it in every set, but it's optionally available for any set. So now treasures,
which would make sense.
So treasures can now show up anywhere at any given time. It's not always going to be there, but if they want to, they can.
Well, it's a good like lore piece that you can put in in a fantasy realm. You know, treasure's always there.
Yep, and it's always a useful mechanic. So, you know, this is 4 mana. That's not nothing. And 2 mana, something you can pay, but no one is paying that 2. Unlike Rhystic Study, where like that card draw, you're looking at them and going, they can win the game right now with all these cards. It's really easy, I think, to see the treasure tokens and just go, it's just mana. Because the question is, will you pay it? Like if someone drops this and passes the turn to you and you draw a card on your draw step, are you paying the 2?
That's such a situational question, though.
Well, sure. Like if it's turn 10 and you've got 14 mana from Mana Rocks, then maybe you pay it. I think though if it's turn 5 or 6 or 7, I think you probably can't.
It's also going to depend on their general and what their deck's supposed to be doing. Like if they're playing a big mana deck, then if I can pay it, I will be paying it.
One thing nice about this though is so then they're paying it, so you've just taxed them.
Yep.
So like there's no downside to this card. Either you're getting free mana or they're losing mana. Either way in white, that's great.
Right. I mean, not only are you getting free mana, you're getting free mana you can use whenever you want.
Right.
It's not like you have to use this by the end of turn.
Correct.
This is just a token sitting here, and if you're playing green-white, you could double all of your tokens with Second Harvest.
Well, it also works with Doubling Season. It also works with those kind of cards as well. Yeah. And that's just their draw step. We're ignoring things like
a Brainstorm
or Wheel of Fortune. Someone casts a Wheel of Fortune, or if you do in Boros, and suddenly you're putting 21 treasure tokens on the field.
That's awesome.
So like the worst case scenario here is you're making 1 mana treasure token when everyone hits their draw step, and that's almost never going to be all it does.
No. I mean, this is also, we're assuming that you get it out no earlier than turn 4.
Right.
I mean, if this is in your opening hand and you have a white source and a soul ring,
and you're playing it on turn 2,
you're set.
Well, even if this comes down end of game, it's still going to tax people.
Right.
Or it's going to set you up to do more things than you were allowed to do to begin with.
And, you know, treasures being relevant, that fuels Revel and Riches. Or it makes artifacts for your Brea deck. I mean, there's a gazillion different things this card does. And so I think I would say odds are you're putting it in any mono white deck. You're putting it in almost any Boros deck, I would say.
I think almost, maybe except for like blue-white, you're putting this in any any 2-color with white.
That's the question. Does it go in dang near every white deck you can run it in?
I mean, in the Banchantress deck, it's just another enchantment fueling your strategy, along with getting you mana, and you're already in green, so you're ramping ahead already.
Well, I'm trying to like, does it go in my Sphinx deck? I'm like, well, maybe. I'm already running, half a dozen, like 8 Mana Rocks.
I could see that too. because your Sphinxes cost 6 mana plus.
Right,
usually.
I could use the mana, and I wouldn't mind taxing somebody. Like there's just, I feel like even in decks with a lot of draw and with a good amount of ramp, there's almost no reason. Like my Enchantress deck, Sigarda is green, so I have the ways to ramp lands, but I'm like, well, it's still an enchantment that draws me a card when I play it and fuels Sphere of Safety and fuels Nykthos, and it gives me mana sitting there that has really no downside. I run like Sony Silence, but okay, who cares? Once in a while I will have them out simultaneously and I can't crack my treasures. Maybe that's not a reason not to run it.
Right. I mean, like I said, like this makes that person playing Brainstorm, that Brainstorm now costs 7.
Yeah.
If they really want to not let me get mana.
Yeah.
A 7 mana Brainstorm.
And no one's paying 7 for their Brainstorm. They're just going to let you take the 3 mana.
Right.
Or Sylvan Library, because those are 3 draw triggers. So someone has a Sylvan Library out and you're making 3 mana. And no one's going to be paying 6 mana for that Sylvan Library. Yeah.
This card's good. This card
is really, really good.
This card is going to be better than I think a lot of people originally thought.
I feel the same way. Max, what's your next card?
My next one's going to be Persistent Petitioners.
Nice.
This is a creature human advisor for 1 and a blue, and it has a 1/3 body. It has 2 activated abilities. One in tap, a colorless and tap it. Target player mills the top card of their library to the graveyard. Or else you can tap 4 untapped advisors you control, and target player mills the top 12 cards from their library.
So if that's where this card ends,
that's still good.
It's still okay. It's still fine, but it's also probably a limited card, and we're not discussing it.
But then it has a final line of text.
Yes, indeed.
A deck can have any amount of persistent petitioners in it.
That changes everything on this card.
This card, to me, makes mill possible in EDH now.
I tend to agree. I've seen some Phoenix decks that effectively do that.
Right.
That are pretty good. But aside from that, mill is super, super risky. I mean, I guess there's like Una combo, but that's more of a combo deck than it is true mill because you're usually exiling stuff.
But the fact that it's not saying you have to tap 4 persistent petitioners, it's 4 creature type of advisors. So any other advisors that get printed in Ravnica Allegiance are maybe the next Ravnica set, or any changelings you put in your deck.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking in terms of changelings. But like Grand Arbiter is an advisor.
Yeah. So I mean, you could essentially, I think this makes multiplayer mill viable in EDH now. I mean, Phoenix was a good step in the direction, but this is just more fodder to not have to play Phoenix.
Yes, I would agree. And it opens up other colors. Phoenix, you are stuck with Phoenix as your commander. You're stuck in Dimir. This lets you basically run any commander you want that has blue that you think you can make work in a weird way with this deck and run 20 of these, and then whatever advisors happen to be in your colors too.
Right.
And there's some decent ones, like I mentioned Grand Arbiter, but Machiko Konda Truthseeker is an advisor. And Council of the Absolute, which was in Dragon's Maze, and basically lets you choose a card, and players can't cast cards that chose a name, so you can basically pick their commander and lock it out. That's an advisor, and there's Kambal is an advisor. So if you're playing in an Esper version of this deck, you can run Kambal. Like there's quite a few decent advisors, and as long as you have one of these guys out and a few other advisors, you can use that ability. And I think this is the first time outside Black we've got that you can run any number of these cards in your deck. It's been the 2 rats previously, I believe, and that was it, right?
Shadowborn Apostle.
Oh yeah, an Apostle.
Yeah, I think that's it.
So yeah, I like that it's blue. I like that you can use any kind of advisor. I'll be curious to see how many of these decks get built and what variations you see. Because I was brewing already, maybe an Aloro version of it is one of the first things I was thinking of trying. But I've seen people already posting about doing Lazav versions or talking about doing... I saw somebody today on Twitter mention a 5-color deck they were thinking about doing with, I think... was it Child of Valar? I can't remember. Some 5-color commander.
Everyone goes to Child of Valar.
Yeah, as your default 5-color commander. But you can use basically any combination you want to and put these in there.
I already have one brewed already.
Do you?
Yep.
Yeah, I like the card. I think and it feels fair. You're only milling it with a 12 when you tap 4 of them.
Right.
I mean, there's tricks. You can run Intruder Alarm, and there's ways to untap those creatures too. But
double the activation with rings or Stronic Resonator or Illusionist Bracer, stuff like that.
Flicker, if you're playing white, you've got Ghost Way to flicker the cards out and have them come back in and tap them all again.
Shh, don't give away my secrets.
That's why I was thinking of Loro. I'm like, I can go Loro. I have white for flicker stuff. Chris is just shaking his head.
No, I'm looking at the prices of all the other cards that have the abilities like this. Shadowborn Apostles, like a $4.50 card.
Yeah.
The rats are all pushing over $1.
Yeah.
So this is a card that I'm probably going to spec during pre-release and just get off of everybody.
And like when you go to your drafts at F&M or whatever, and people finish the draft and like toss their chaff off to the side, because no one's going to want to draft this for the most part. Any of these you can pull out of draft chaff, absolutely pull them out, because this card will be worth, if it isn't worth $2 in 2 months, it'll be worth $2 in a year or 2 years.
Yeah, because it sets up an archetype that's really hard to play.
Yes. And it requires 20 of these probably, or 15 of them at least. It's a really cool card. I like it a lot. I think it's a good addition, and I was glad we got it. Chris, lay one on us here.
All right, I'm going to jump into another creature. Well, Max has been doing all creatures.
So far. Smothering Tithe was my second card on my list.
Okay. This one, I'm going to make you guys guess on this one.
Ooh, all right.
Okay. It is a 2/2 creature for 5 mana.
Oh, 2/2 creature
Bad
for
card.
5. I'm trying to think what you would have... Man.
When it comes into play, it creates a creature token.
Okay.
It has an activate ability to create a creature token.
Was this the ooze?
This is the biogenic ooze. So 3 colorless and 2 green for this guy. As I stated, it's a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, it creates a 2/2 green ooze. Now it has an activate ability of 1 colorless and trip green to create a 2/2 green ooze. All cool and everything.
Yep.
Well, how about at the beginning of your end step, you put a +1/+1 counter on each ooze you control.
And every ooze.
Yes.
Man, it's just too bad it's not legendary.
I know.
What a cool legendary card that would have been.
The reason I picked this card is because it is a standalone card. It can do everything itself. You don't have to build an ooze deck. You don't have to do anything else. I mean, it turns into a 3/3 at your end step, plus the other one that comes into play.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's everything that it has. It allows it to do it by itself with no supporting cast.
Yeah, you're immediately getting value off it no matter what. And if you happen to have more oozes out because of whatever deck you're playing, that's even better.
A scavenging ooze?
There we go.
What's the other one?
There's a couple black oozes too.
One of them, we're not going to talk about commanders really, but Vanifar, the new Simic commander, she's an elf wizard ooze, I think.
The new prime speaker?
Yeah. So there's actually even, and I think Mimeoplasm is an ooze.
I really want to know what happened on Ravnica that these are like ooze creatures now, and there was like an elf snake shaman or something, and I'm like, what is going on?
All the Simic creature combinations are all just insane. Yeah, I like the ooze a lot. That's a good card.
Yes.
And that's actually one that will be just a bomb in limited and draft kind of environments too, as well as being
I'm curious
cool
to
commander
see
card.
how this will get played though in Commander. If it's going to go into a token deck, or if people are just going to jam it in any green deck as another beater.
Or their +1 counter deck. It has good synergy there, and a +1 counter deck as well. Yeah, it's a cool card. I like it a lot. My second one is an instant speed blue spell. Precognitive Perception. 3 and 2, so 5 total. For an instant speed, draw 3 cards. And at that point, if it ended there, that would be a Jace's Ingenuity, which is in almost 3,000 decks in EDH Rack. Instant speed draw 3. Something like Ambition's Cost or Ancient Craving in black.
3 for 4.
It's 3 for 4. This is 3 for 5, but it's instant speed, so you're not giving up life, and you get instant speed for 1 more mana. That's not terrible. I don't love Jace's Ingenuity, but I also don't hate it. However, if you cast a spell during your main phase, you scry 3, then draw 3 cards. Scry 3 before you draw is really, really big. It really helps you get things you need, particularly when you get to turn like 6, 7 or so, and you want to make sure you don't get lands. This will make it way easier to get gas.
I agree. I mean, in a 100-card deck, I've noticed a lot of people, though, shy away from Scry because you have so many cards. But I think all it is just it's a filtering option.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to try it out on at least one deck. I don't think it's amazing, but it feels like one of those cards that I'm going to be pleasantly surprised at.
Well, if you're playing Jace's Ingenuity and anything, this automatically replaces
absolutely
it.
Upgrade that to this.
I think it's one of those cards that there are going to be times where you just cast it and draw 3 because you need 3 cards.
I just want 3 cards. I have mana open because I was holding counterspell mana. No one paid anything. I'm just drawing 3.
Right. And then there are going to be times where it's like, okay, I'll cast this on my second main phase.
Yep.
and draw, scry, then draw.
Because it's turn 7 at this point, and I have 9 mana available from mana rocks and stuff, and I'm holding a Swan Song in my hand in case things got to get out of control. I'm just going to main phase it and filter down and get the 3 best cards. So I like cards that give you options based on what your game state is and what the board is, and this is one that definitely gives you options. Max, what's your next one on your list?
My next one is Electro Dominance.
Yeah, this card has been getting a lot of talk online.
This is a instant spell, a red instant spell for X red, and it reads, Electro Dominance deals X damage to any target, and then you may cast a card with X CMC or less without paying its mana cost from your hand.
So I did hear one person at the shop when it was full this week say, I'm putting it in every red deck. I don't know about that, but...
Well, I'm kind of comparing this to like a Rish, any of the expertise, mainly Rishkar's expertise.
Yep.
It does involve a little setup, like you can't
Sure.
cast this with an empty hand.
Correct.
Unlike Rishkar's expertise. But I mean, if you cast this for 3, knowing you have a creature that needs to come and play or a mana rock, so you're going to deal 3 to something, kill a planeswalker, and then drop that commander sphere to draw a card or tap it for more mana, that seems totally legit in my book.
It kind of winds up being almost like a modular card. So like, okay, I'm going to spend 5 and deal 3 to that planeswalker, and then I will cast Cathartic Reunion off it for free. So basically you're stapling something on damage onto a spell that you are probably going to cast for an additional 2 mana. I'm curious. I can't entirely visualize what deck I would want to run it, but it's a really, really interesting card.
I mean, Mizzix decks are going to run this no matter what, because it's an X spell.
Sure,
and just the reduction alone is going to do a lot of work.
What do you think of it, Chris?
I don't know.
It's kind of tough to read.
I'm a red player, and I like the card, but I don't like the card at the same time. It's a lot of mana to invest to get ahead when you could just cast the other spell instead.
Yes.
Like the X damage usually is not going to make that big of a difference. I mean, so for 5 mana you're dealing 3 damage.
Right.
I mean, unless it's early game, you're probably not going to kill anything with it, and putting a lightning bolt into somebody doesn't feel good in a multiplayer.
Maybe a planeswalker that is useful. Now, bear in mind, though, the way it is worded, you can also use cards that have suspend.
Yes.
So, like, you can cast an Ancestral
Recall.
Visions. Ancestral Visions off it, or you can cast Restore Balance off it.
Yep.
There's a few cool implications there where you can get some free spells like that. But, like, are you going to be running... I mean, maybe if you already have Ancestral Visions in your red-blue deck, then you'll get lucky on occasion, get to do that. I don't think you want to tweak your deck around hoping you have one of those spells in hand for this.
Right.
I can see this being bonkers if you have a lot of mana. Like, let's just go into a perfect world and say we're playing Rakdos with Cabal Coffers and Urborg and all that, and you tap for like 50 mana. Then this is just stupid.
Right, yeah. But even like if you're at 12, say you're at 12 or 14 mana, like, oh man, I was going to cast this Udvari Hellkite anyway.
Yep.
I might as well dome somebody for 10 and cast Udvari Hellkite.
Yep.
I mean, in your situation there, Chris, wouldn't you be better off just running like Jaya's Immolating Fire, because it's going to do more damage to more people at the same time for 1 extra red?
Isn't Jaya's Emulating Fire, though, a legendary sorcery?
You need to have a legendary out.
So you need to have a legendary to do it. This card, though, the only upside I see to this is a way to, if I'm not mistaken, someone's going to call me out on this if I am, but to break the rules of the game. Because it's an instant speed spell, so I can jam a creature in an instant speed.
Yes, you can. And like I said, I think if you're playing some kind of a deck that has a bunch of big beaters in it, like Ur-Dragon, for example, where all your dudes cost you 6, 7, 8 mana for some of them.
Yep.
I think it makes a lot of sense there, because you're going to be spending 8 mana a lot of times on a creature anyway. I think just doming somebody at the same time while getting the instant speed out of it as well is pretty useful there.
Agreed.
So it's kind of a lot of the times you look at these cards and you're like, well, if you're in a really efficient deck, you can make work out of it. This one almost wants to be in a really inefficient deck that has really expensive stuff. But I like the card, and I think there's a lot of ones in this set that make me go, oh, that's really clever. Even if I don't like it or don't want to run it, I feel like there's a lot of cards I think that these feel like kind of great designer search cards where a bunch of people were like, let's try this thing and see what happens.
The expertises work pretty well. Let's put it on a burn spell.
Yeah. So yeah, I am a fan of it. Chris, what's your third card?
This is probably just a pet card of mine, and we'll see what other people think about this. It's called Theater of Horrors.
Oh no, that's an awesome card. That's an awesome card.
I saw this card and I go, oh boy, Mogus is gonna get worse.
Oh yeah.
So for 1 colorless and Rakdos, you get an enchantment. Now this enchantment reads: at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. During your turn, if an opponent lost life this turn, you may play cards exiled with Theater of Horrors. Then it has the activated ability of 3 colorless and a red. Theater of Horrors deals 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. So basically this is, if no one removes it, you could have like 12 cards under it.
Right, and you're not stuck with casting the card that got exiled that turn.
Yep,
you
it can just sit there.
Any card that was exiled with it at any point in time. I think the ability to deal damage to somebody for 4 mana is not irrelevant either in some decks that can generate a ton of mana. But I mean, in Rakdos colors, like your Mogus deck, for example, everyone's taking damage every turn for the most part.
Yep, I just want to Pyrrhemia, like wipe the board and be like, oh, and now I can cast this too.
But in that deck, it's essentially a second Phyrexian Arena.
Yep.
Worst case, it's a better one almost.
It's a better Outpost Siege.
Yeah, there you go.
It's
for sure.
cheaper, and you keep the cards forever. You don't get to play the lands, but you do get to play. So you can play lands. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can play any card exiled.
I think in Rakdos, you probably run both. If you can afford a 3-drop and a 4-drop, you run both
maybe.
this and Outpost Siege.
I mean, the thing about Outpost Siege that this gets around is sometimes with Outpost Siege, you like get that land on there, and you have a land in hand. They're like, oh, it would be more efficient to play these in reverse order, but I don't want to lose that land in case I don't draw one for next turn. I want to hit both land drops,
right.
So I'll just play the bad sequence. This gets around that. You can play the one in your hand, and then next turn, if you need to get your land drop off the one that you got exiled, you can then use it.
This pairs great with Experimental Frenzy.
The thing I like about this too is that it reads, you can cast cards that were exiled with it. So you don't have to cast anything from your hand.
You don't have to, right, correct.
If you wait 3 or 4 turns and this thing's got 4 cards under it, you can just jam every single card that's under it.
Yeah.
It's also a card that I think people are going to overlook during gameplay. Like, let's say I exile a Go for the Throat underneath of it, and I'm just going to let it go.
For 3 to 4 turns.
Yep. Ping them.
Very easy to forget that was there.
Yeah, ping them and then just blast it off.
Yeah. I like this card a lot. I think it's more than a pet card. It's just a really good card in general. We will go on to my next one. Another enchantment, since we're all doing enchantments. Well, I guess Max didn't, but Chris and I both just did.
Yeah, he hasn't said a single one yet.
Because they've been taken so far.
If I haven't taken all of them? Well, here's another one. Verity Circle. An enchantment for 2 and a blue. Whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes tapped, if it isn't being declared as an attacker, you may draw a card. So, hey, Mana Dorks.
This card is so
dumb. Mana Dorks are drawing me a card. Oh, you're going to convoke that? Cool. I'm just going to draw a bunch of stuff. Every time, if your buddy plays in a zombie deck, just jam this into your blue deck. Oh, a zombie's drawn a card? Cool, me too. Derevi, who taps stuff on attack. Any deck that's playing like Opposition or Glare of Subdual, where you're tapping your creatures to tap their stuff down. Or, if you see people in your meta that are playing Earthcraft or what is the Cryptolith Rites.
Yep.
I mean, just think of how many times in the average game someone uses an activated ability that taps a creature, or uses like the convoke thing we mentioned. There's a gazillion things that are activated abilities in this, and you draw a card off every one of them.
When Dana suits up Glissa to machine gun things, she's like, I'll draw a card, I'll draw a card, I'll draw a card, I'll draw a card.
Yeah.
You can get that Urza's Bobble back as much as you want.
Right. But really, yeah, I think this might be a little bit meta dependent. I think if you have friends that play specific decks, I think it really shines there when your buddy has an Azami deck and your girlfriend has a elf deck with a gazillion mana dorks in it. I think then you definitely play it. But I think just accidentally, this is going to draw you frequently, probably one card a tripper on the board very frequently, if not multiple cards.
Well, it's ability on it too, though. 5 mana, you can just tap down a creature.
Without flying.
Right. If you need to, you can do that.
That's tapping down a commander most times.
In a lot of ways, it's also a bit like, I've just forgotten the name of the very first card we mentioned, Smothering Tithe, where there isn't a tax on the card, but there kind of is. If someone doesn't want you to draw a card, they don't tap their mana dork or whatever it is. So you are still kind of taxing them without actually having to tax them. I haven't quite figured out, like Smothering Tithe I was looking at and I'm like, okay, well that's just going in this deck and that deck. This one I don't know necessarily what deck I want it in, but I'm going to test it out because I can't entirely visualize how many cards it's going to draw me. until I get it into a game, but I feel like it's going to draw a ton of cards.
It'd be nice in a deck where you are casting spells that actually tap your opponent's creatures down.
Yeah.
For like combat tricks, like a cryptic command or other stuff along those lines. I think Send to Sleep is the 4-mana one that was in Ixalan that taps everything down. I mean, stuff like that, and it'll just net you cards. Now, in Draft, I think this is going to be a stupid card.
Because it's all about attacking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am a big fan of it. I want to see it in a game, and we will report back. This is one I'll kind of do as a homework project as well, and let you know how well it worked out. So that's my number 3. Max, what's number 4 for you?
I'm going to go with an enchantment.
All right,
excellent.
Boy! We're going to talk about Guardian Project.
Yeah.
So this is an enchantment for 3 colorless and a green. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it does not have the same name as another creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, draw a card. So for constructed, standard, modern, all that fun stuff, this is a little more trickier. But in EDH, it just means play a creature, draw a card.
Or if you're Patrick Sepulveda and you're playing a Marin's Rats deck, can't run this card, unfortunately. Sorry, Patrick. But everybody else.
Enjoy.
I think this really probably shines in a elf deck or maybe a blue-green merfolk deck where you have a bunch of small bodies.
Reki History of Kamigawa.
I've been trying to figure out if I want to run it in Reki. Part of the problem in Reki is...
So turn 3 Reki, turn 4 this, play a creature, draw 2.
I guess, that's true. I don't have a lot of smaller creatures, so I haven't decided if I'm going to run it in the deck or not, but I'm strongly considering it. But I think the deck I think if you're running something with a bunch of small bodies... it's insane. So in the clause about it's also entered the battlefield. It's not cast.
Yeah. So it has to resolve.
But it also works off of blink effects, things like that.
Yep.
So, that's the downside. But also there's some decks where that's an upside because you're going to be if you're doing blink shenanigans or something, you're getting extra value out of it as well. We mentioned a rune before. There's another one that might work well in a rune deck.
I can't wait to run it. I mean, I already have a spot for it.
I've been trying to figure out if I want to try it in Edric.
Oh,
drop it in Edric, and because
that's a little high on the curve for Edric.
It is,
isn't it?
it is, but it's a backup plan if Edric's gone for a turn or something.
That's what I was thinking about. Reki was as a backup plan because I noticed when I played Reki on Tuesday, Reki got killed immediately, repeatedly, to the point where it just got annoying. I never cast Reki again.
And you can get to that can get to a point where you can do that. So this will give me a backup because I used to run Zendikar Resurgent in that deck as a backup plan. But that's 7 mana. This is only 4. This is way easier to have stake.
This is getting slotted into Dromoka over a card I tried from Guilds,
which was
Bounty of Might. It was the target creature gains +3/+3, and you do it 3 times.
Yep.
I didn't like that card at all.
Neither have I since trying it. So this will be much better, lower on the curve, and you can't cast stuff if Dromoka's out, so I always get to draw a card, is what that reads.
Do you know what deck really wants this card? Animar Morphs.
Oh, Lord.
Where you just play your morph for free and draw a card, and hopefully it's a morph that you can play for free and draw a card.
Don't they all have the name Morph, though?
I don't believe so. I don't think so. Well, you know what? I said that. I say that. I guess I'm not 100% positive. I don't think so. So we just took a brief break and edited it out while we looked that up. Morphs don't have a name, so you would successfully be able to do that with Animar, where you can just cast it for free, assuming you have enough counters with Animar, and draw a card that's hopefully a morph to cast again, and keep doing that.
And deck yourself.
Because Animar had a real shortage of ways to win games. So yeah, that's another one for our former cast member Luke Witten playing an Animar morph deck. Slot it in, my friend.
Yikes.
Chris, what's your next one?
I'm going to go back to the realm of creatures.
All right.
And this is a X-Spell creature.
All right.
So X and Simic.
I know what you're talking
It's
about.
called a Hydroid Crassus.
Yeah.
So it's a 0/0 with the X casting cost. It reads, when you cast this spell, you gain half X life and draw half X cards rounded down each time. It has flying and trample, and when it enters the battlefield, it then comes into play with X +1/+1 counters on it. So I love this card, but I hate this card at the same time because you want to pump a whole bunch of mana into this, but you're not really drawing as many cards as you wanted to.
Right.
But if you do pump a whole bunch of mana into this, it's just a monster when it hits the field.
And it has evasion and trample.
Mm-hmm.
And the draw and life is on cast, not on resolution. So you still get that fact, even if it gets countered if you tap out for it.
It's a really good card, but I think where it really, really, really is going to shine is in a +1 counters deck, because you're already trying to make some giant gross creature that has a bunch of counters that you can then double with Doubling Season or Hardened Scales, put one more on it or whatever. And this is giving you the added bonus of also gaining you life and drawing you cards for the thing that you're already going to be trying to do. I already wanted to cast a Forgotten Ancient or an Ivy Elemental or whatever that had a bunch of counters on it. This is going to give you an additional reward for what you already wanted to do anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
And this is a Jellyfish Hydra Beast.
You're right.
I really want to know what happened to all these creatures on Ravnica.
The bull has happened, man.
the Simic Combine has run amok. I saw somebody wrote about how no one ever mentions what just a nightmare world Ravnica is. Talk about like Innistrad being a nightmare world. Everything on Ravnica is a nightmare. If you go to see the doctor, they graft jellyfish arms on you. When I go to the circus, they torture you. Like anything you do is just horrifying in Ravnica. And I was like, that's a pretty good point. Well, my next one is a sorcery spell in black for 2 mana, 1 in a black. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice 2 creatures. Draw 3 cards. It's simple. It's clean as an uncommon. I don't think you're just going to run it in any deck. But if you're running a sacrifice deck like Max Ragnarok deck where you don't care or you have a bunch of tokens, drawing 3 for 2 mana is really, really good. And if you happen to be like playing a Grave Pact deck or an Edict deck that takes advantage of that, or Thraxamundar where stuff being sacrificed gets... I mean, there's a ton of synergy with this card that's going to just be disgusting.
I don't think you're netting enough cards for it, though.
You don't think so? You don't think 3's enough for losing 2 creatures?
No, because the other ones, sack 1, get 2 cards?
Yeah, like
all
Costly
the other
Plunder.
ones?
Yeah.
But those are typically instant speed spells, so you're drawing 1 extra for the slower speed of the spell.
Right. But you lose an extra creature too. I think this is one you have to be running in a deck that cares about sacrifice. Like you can run Costly Plunder just as a value card because at some point something's going to be dying and you're like, yeah, whatever, I'll draw 2.
Mm-hmm.
I think this one you want to run it in your deck that's like built around Grave Pacts or built around recurring stuff from your graveyard. Like you need to take advantage of it. But I think the decks that are taking advantage of that, it's going to do really good work as like your middle of the range hand filler. So it's a card I am a fan of. And it's got really cool art as well. Seb McKinnon has just been killing it with like creepy blood affiliated art lately. Max, what's your next one?
I have another enchantment.
All right.
We're going to talk about Rhythm of the Wild.
I don't remember which card that was.
This is for 1 colorless in Gruul. It's an enchantment that reads, creature spells you control can't be countered.
Oh, yeah.
Non-token creatures you control have Riot. And Riot is one of the new mechanics from Ravnica Allegiance. And it pretty much says, the creature enters the battlefield with your choice of a +1/+1 counter or haste.
A much better tribute.
Way better tribute, because you control it.
Yep.
Well, and if you're in Gruul or you're in Jund or anything that has red-green, and you're running Fervor as a haste enabler, the worst case scenario with this is you always use the haste portion on your creature, and it's a better Fervor because it keeps your spells from being countered.
Yep.
So if you are playing red-green and have Fervor, this is automatically almost a better Fervor. You know, it's slightly harder to cast. It's still 3 mana.
What's the other one? Yavimaya.
Fires of
Yavimaya.
Fires of Yavimaya. Yep. That you can sacrifice. So, odds are you're already running Fires of Yavimaya instead of Fervor because technically it's a better Fervor as well.
Yep.
This would be a definite upgrade over Fires.
I think, like, in the few times I've built Gruul, I always like having 2 haste enablers.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like, having both of those out, this and either Fires of Yavimaya or Fervor out or Hammer of Perforos, this just says, okay, I'm going to take the haste from Fervor and make my dude 1 stronger.
Right, this kind of solves that problem. If you have 2 haste enablers of having one of them become redundant, you can still cast the second one and get utility off it.
Yeah, this card solidified my choice of building a Thromok deck.
Oh, nice.
Because Thromok, you kind of have to wait to the perfect point to cast Thromok because you want it to be big and you want to be able to swing right away.
Mm-hmm.
And this lets me not worry about it being countered, and it comes in with haste.
Yeah.
On top of the bajillion counters it's going to have.
Yeah, it's a really, really useful card. I like Riot too. Riot's, again, it's one of those mechanics that lets you make the choice to what's better for the moment for you. It's simple, but I think it's a really useful mechanic. Chris, what is next on your list?
I'm going to go into the realm of enchantments again.
All right.
I'm surprised none of you have talked about this one yet. It is a 3-mana enchantment. In Azorius.
Think I know what it's going to be.
This enchantment reads, each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to the toughness rather than its power. Creatures you control can attack as though they didn't have defender. 2 colorless, 1 white, 1 blue, untap target creature.
So it's a backup plan in your Arcades deck.
Yep.
What was the name of that card?
High Alert.
High Alert.
So another uncommon enchantment. I'm loving this uncommon cycle right now.
There's a bunch of really good uncommon enchantments. Yeah, I like it as a backup plan. Unfortunately, you can't run it in your Doran deck, but I guess Doran decks don't really run a lot of walls either.
I honestly think Arcades is probably better than Doran in my opinion, because you have more selection of cards in the walls.
Yeah.
And Arcades reads whenever you cast a creature with defender, you get to draw a card.
Yep.
Right.
So you're actually netting cards on top of it. Plus, you're just in better colors.
Yeah, having blue over black is much better.
So amazing enchantment.
It is.
Can't wait. Now I can build my Arcades deck because now I have.
Are you going to build Arcades?
I've been sitting on Arcades looking for more for it, and then I saw this card. And I'm like, oh, thank you. I was looking for something like this.
Nice. Well, that's a little bit different than you usually play for deck style too. That'll be.
Yep. I just wanted butt fight all day.
Sure, right.
Just be like, oh, and I play another wall, and I play another wall.
Don't Google butt fight, please. I'm gonna pull a CCO there.
Or if you want to, don't tell us about it. Don't do it in public.
Don't blame us for it.
Right,
Our
exactly.
Slack's gonna blow up from this and be like, guys, I Googled it.
I did it at work and now I'm fired.
Well, I will do one more enchantment here. Ethereal Absolution. It's 4, a white, and a black. It says creatures you control get +1/+1. Creatures your opponents control get -1/-1. And you can spend 2 white and a black. Exile target card from an opponent's graveyard. If this was a creature card, you create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying, which then becomes a 2/2 by virtue of having this enchantment out. So it's a little bit of graveyard hate if you need to use it. But this is going to come down and immediately buff your creatures. And even if somebody immediately removes it, it still killed every 1/1 that you weren't controlling. It's not an amazing card, but I think it's a really, really good card. If it was 5 mana, it would be fantastic. 6 is a lot.
It is. It's kind of a weaker Elish Norn.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I don't think it's going to get the hate that Elish Norn
I don't
gets.
think it will either.
And it's more accessible than Elish Norn, because Elish Norn's like a $20 card.
Yeah.
And it's hard to come by because it's only been printed in master sets and the mirrored
Years ago
the
in
Phyrexian
Mirrodin.
set. Yep.
Yeah.
And the beautiful, beautiful Judge foil.
Oh yeah. But I mean, it's half an Elish Norn, and it's actually harder to remove than Elish Norn because
Right.
it's an enchantment.
Almost every color has a way to remove Elish Norn. There are colors that can't deal with Ethereal Absolution.
Yep.
If you're playing red or black, or red and black, you're just stuck there staring at it for the most part.
Challenge accepted. I'm a chaos warp that thing.
I guess.
Fuck
right,
it, I
true.
got it. You remember episode 76 when we were talking about that? I just chaos warped it.
I just tutored up my Spinavisha. Got him. Yeah, I like the card. I would run it. I might put it in my Arvai the Curse deck. We'll see. But I think it's a really neat card. So that's been 5 from each of us. Are there any more cards you want to do a quick mention of that caught your eye that didn't quite make your top 5, but you
I have
liked?
the one that I mentioned earlier that I didn't actually mention.
Which one?
Deputy of Detention,
Yeah,
which is literally detention sphere on a creature.
on a guy.
Yep.
Which
He's
is still
also
pretty
a
useful.
wizard.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
There's one common that was not spoiled until today that kind of caught my eye, which is Final Payment, which is a white and a black. And as an additional cost to cast a spell, you have to pay 5 life or sacrifice a creature or an enchantment. So that's, kind of a downside. But you just destroy target creature for 2 mana.
Instant
speed, no restriction other than you have to sacrifice a creature or pay 5 life. That's not bad. And it's a common.
And it's black and white.
Black and white.
And there might be a really good general who's black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that makes tokens for you to sacrifice to
Right?
it. So yeah, I like this one. And like looking at it, I mean, clearly it's, more geared towards standard and limited, but I was like, man, there's decks where I would run this. I was thinking about your Raiden and Krav deck. I don't necessarily know if it entirely makes a cut, because in Commander you've got things like, in those colors you have Swords and Path and Anguish Unmaking and Utter End.
Yeah.
I think the competition is the problem, but I think it's a really good card. It has the same problem I think that Unmake has, where there's just too many better cards in that color combination. But I think it's still a really cool card. And if you're on a budget and you can't afford a Path to Exile and you can't afford an Utter End, because Utter End's up to like $5.
Yep.
I think Anguish is closing in on $5. If you're on a budget, I think that's a legit card to play in some Orzhov decks.
Oh, so I totally agree with that.
Well, they did just reprint Mortify, though, too. So
That's true.
It's easier
Yeah.
for people to find.
Which is also one that's kind of gotten bumped out by Anguish Unmaking and Utter End.
Yep.
Because Mortify was a great card 5 years ago, and it's just kind of got bumped out a little bit. Same as Putrefy with Assassin's Trophy and things like that. So I think that's probably it.
Sure.
We did.
There was one more I was going to mention.
Well, what is it?
But
Let's talk about it.
I just wanted your guys' views on this card, because Wizards swore up and down they would never print another one of these.
I know what this is going to be.
And it's a 4-mana Wrath of God.
Yes, indeed.
Called Kaya's Wrath. So double white, double black, destroy all creatures. You gain life equal to the number of creatures you controlled that were destroyed this way.
I don't think it's good enough for Commander. I think Fumigate is one more mana, and it's way easier to cast.
Yep, it's just white. Because I looked at this card for Alesha, and I was like, I play a lot of creatures. This could be nice, but I have my Wrath, I have my Damnation, I have my Decree of Pain. Why would I slot this in?
You've got Austere Command. You've got what's the baby Austere Command that just got reprinted? Whose name? Cleansing Nova, Merciless Eviction in those colors.
Yep.
So I think it's not a competition kind of situation here, and that mana cost is rough.
It is,
especially in anything over, even in like my Regna and Krav deck. I'm sitting there looking at it like, there's a lot of times where I only have 1 or 2 white sources out, and I'm not going to waste them on this type of board wipe.
I think if this was like a Golgari card, which I think it could be double black, double green for this card, and Golgari, which tends to go wide with creatures, I think then it's much more interesting. Like, there's plenty of times I might have 8 creatures in play and I'll gain 8 life. And in that case, you're not competing with Austere Command or Cleansing Nova for a slot in your deck. I think in that situation, it's much more interesting, but I think there's just too much stuff in white-black that you have for options.
Yeah, I'm just curious if it was printed because white-black is a token-generating type of deck or something.
In
but
Standard,
it's going to be.
I think you'll see this as like 1-ofs in Standard or 2-ofs.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
I have a feeling it's going to be more than that. I think Esper Control is going to take off now that it has a 4-mana board wipe. Straight up board wipe.
And if I do a pre-release and I go Orzhov and get one of these, I bet it's pretty solid in your pre-release deck too. If you've got a bunch of stuff that makes those tokens when they die, I'd run this. So before we take off here, we did get the official name spoiled, I don't remember if it was yesterday or today, of the 3rd set, which is War of the Spark.
Oh, I thought it was Magic the Gathering Infinity War.
That was the I think
the running meme all day.
The running meme going around all day about it.
Which it's been verified that Bolas is going to be in there because one of the text boxes on I think it's Dovin Bond has him counting off all the walkers, and then Bolas is the last one.
Yeah.
And it was actually referenced all the way back at Mechanized Production.
Yeah.
The flavor text, Dovin says, "Give me 8 walkers, and I will give you the city."
Which at the time you're thinking in terms of
Kaladesh.
Of Kaladesh, but that's a nice call forward.
Yeah.
So we'll presumably see some kind of payoff for the storyline coming up.
Please bring Ugin back.
I want everyone to die.
Yeah, I mean...
No, I want Ugin to come and just like wax Bolas and make him be like, "Yo, what's up?"
Oh, I think
big bros here.
they've clearly been like keeping the name a secret for some reason. Although we knew it was going to be a war, the name didn't so it's a war and there's planeswalkers involved. We knew that already.
Right.
So I'll be curious where it goes. One thing that's nice is they're no longer beholden to the guild structure in terms of the set. We've got all 10 guilds, so they don't have to do any perfect balancing of guilds anymore. They can release whatever they want to release for creatures.
I'm curious if this becomes an all-out war against Bolas and we start seeing like mix-matched guilds.
Yeah.
Like into like shards, like from cons or whatever, where they start joining forces type of deal.
Up. It also would be a good chance for them to to give us some first looks at some characters that have been mentioned we haven't seen. Like we've never gotten a Feather card who's from Ravnica. We've never gotten a who's the homunculus? Flip.
Yep.
We've never got a Massacre Girl card.
Nope.
But like very easily these could all be like a Dominaria kind of set where they just print an extra amount of legends because it's a war and all the kind of lore characters are coming out to fight for or against Bolas.
Feather to return to Ravnica would be awesome.
Yeah. Well, and she's just held in, I think, a Boros prison right now.
Yep.
So it could easily be explained as, hey, we had to open up the cells because we need every available hand to fight Bolas.
I also hope this is the end of this, and we go on to something new.
I would also like to go to something a little more small scale. That's one of the things I liked most about going to Ixalan was that, yes, there was some of the story in it, but you got to enjoy the world.
It was like a new world.
Yeah,
type of deal.
you could appreciate the world for what it was without worrying about the ramifications on the greater storyline.
Yeah. Let's go back in time, back to Kamigawa again.
Well, I would love to go to Kamigawa or any plane that you can just appreciate the plane without having to think about the bigger story. The bigger story is fun, but like I'm ready to have a break from it as well.
I just can't wait to see Karn show up on Ravnica and be like, "What up?"
Well, yeah, because we could very easily get a Karn card. He is on the ship,
to
very
ferry.
Right. Yeah, this will be. I think it'll be a fun set. I'm hoping it is anyway. There's a lot of potential for a lot of cool stuff because Jaya's there as well.
It's gonna be Ugin because we haven't seen Ugin in God knows how long.
And there's enough ties from him. He knew this was happening. He was
with Azor.
He was involved with Azor back on in Ixalan, which is now he can now get to because the sun is gone.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken, he is the second most powerful planeswalker right behind Bolas.
I would assume, I would believe so. And Bolas doesn't know he's alive. That's still out there as well. So there's a little story thread they can tug on. I am looking forward to it, and it's not that far off. There's a long gap between the fall set and the spring and the winter set. The winter set to spring set's a much shorter wait, so we'll start getting stuff for this in 6 or 8 weeks, I think. I am excited for it. I think that is it for this week. I am Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.